Okay, I think we are ready to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live panel entitled Caption Media for Your Campus, Learning from Others. This is our first webinar of 2023, so we're excited to host this today. My name is Lore Canast. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Allow me to describe myself. I am a white woman with long blonde hair. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses and a long sleeve dark navy shirt. Behind me is a dark gray backdrop. I work here at the National Deaf Center on Post-Secondary Outcomes, also known as NDC. I am the Strategic Support Director. NDC is a technical assistance and dissemination center funded by the Department of Education under the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP. Our mission is to share information, networks, strategies to improve continuing education for deaf people. We know that you all are either just starting your spring semester or will soon begin. And we realize this is a busy time of year for many of you. So we want to thank you for taking the time to be here today. NDC is excited to host this opportunity to go over best practices, tips, and strategies from the panelists. Caption media is a hot topic. NDC did a survey in 2017 through 2020. We interviewed about 87, or we got 87 responses to the survey of disability services professionals. And about 30% of the people said they had a caption media program or policy on their campus. I'm suspecting there was a lot of transition after the pandemic when we moved over to online courses. And we know there was an uptick in the requests for caption media once the pandemic happened. Our help desk gets a lot of questions related to caption media. So we really hope today provides you with some best practices, policies, procedures that help you establish the best caption media policies on your campus. Before we do that, I want to show a video of Ashley Hayes sharing her experience with caption media at her institution. So let's watch this video together.
When a film was shown without closed caption, I would ask the instructor if the video was captioned or not. When they indicated they did not know, I would ask them to please find out, because without it, I can't understand the film. They hadn't even considered it. One time, someone asked me if I could read lips, to which I responded, yes and no. In their confusion, I clarified that I could read some words on people's lips, but it didn't mean that I could understand everything being said. Lip reading involves a lot of guesswork. So only when I ask if there are captions does it even occur to them. Even if a deaf character is on screen and they are using sign language, I still would ask for captions to be turned on because it forces them to rethink accessibility as a whole. It forces them, in a nice way, it forces it to become the new normal.
I appreciate Ashley's approach. We hope that NDC resources related to caption media have been helpful. By the way, our resources are all free. I know that our resources have helped many of you, but we recognize there are still challenges that arise with establishing practices on campus or being unsure of which model might be the best fit on your campus. With that, we are hoping today you can learn from 3 other panelists, maybe borrow some of their practices and procedures they have developed. Or maybe you currently don't have any type of campus policy related to caption media. We encourage you to start with a campus-wide policy. So let's think about what that process looks like, where to start, and who should be at the table. Those are all good questions I'm sure you're asking. So let's go ahead and get started with the webinar by inviting our 3 fabulous panelists to join us. I would like to ask you 3 to go ahead and turn on your cameras.
as well. And once that request is submitted, then I, as captioning coordinator, work it through the next steps. So that typically starts with access. So someone could submit a video that is physical media, like a DVD or VHS. They could submit something. They could submit something on YouTube or something that's just on their computer, and I give them those next steps about hosting. And then I also manage the captioning process if we send it out or keep it in-house, and then also adding it to the video, quality control, and any troubleshooting. Okay, so I think I also mentioned that I manage digitizing if that media is a physical media. One other service I provide is like caption review for videos that might have existing captioning. And a lot of times that is like automated YouTube captioning, which we wouldn't allow as the finalized captions. And so then I provide troubleshooting about how to recaption that. We process our requests both in-house and through a third-party vendor. We tried about 6 different vendors before we found like the perfect fit for our needs, turnaround time, and budget. And then once we finish a file, either through a vendor or through in-house, everything gets a quality check. And in our quality check, we are ensuring that the file matches our internal style guide, which has been closely modeled after the Described and Captioned Media Program, or DCMP's captioning key. And so that outlines expectations for transcription accuracy, timing, line breaking, reading rate, and stylistic things like sound effects and speaker IDs. And so we optimize every file up to that level. And the goal of that is not necessarily 99% accuracy, but a most equitable experience. So extremely accurate, but also equitable experience. And that is that final quality check is performed either by me, a trained student worker, or sometimes the requester themselves, who is trained up to those kind of standards. And really the last part of our process is training. I'm always open and available for training and have several training programs throughout the year to empower our staff and faculty in selecting and creating accessible media from the start, with the eventual goal, ideally, of providing captioning right away or at the planning process and not as a remediation or afterthought.
Very good. Thank you. Andrew, did you want to share?
Yeah, our process has a lot of similarity with Brittany's. One thing we use is AIM, AIM, which is Accessible Information Management. And it's a system that we use for a lot of our accommodations and advisor meetings and stuff like that. And so students will request their accommodations and they can check which accommodations they want to use for each class. And so then I can see who is requesting captioned media for their course. And then that triggers a video request letter that is sent to each instructor, where they are given instructions on how to upload media. Has to be a URL link, it can't be a video file. And if it is, they can send that via email, and we work with instructors because caption media can come in any format. And so that gets sent to us, and then we use also in-house and vendors to caption media. So sometimes stuff gets sent out, sometimes we work on it, and it kind of depends on student worker workload, our staff workload, and the ability to really focus on those captions. And then once the video is finished, we do a check of the audio of the caption quality, and then it's uploaded to a AEC YouTube channel when that URL is shared with the instructor to then replace the non-caption media that they want to show. And so all media that is for a student-based need or accommodation comes through our office. If it is another department wants to post a video and get captioning, or it's not necessarily for a student with our office, then we send them through a different service through our university. We have a contract with a different vendor And then any department on campus can fill out that form and then have that direct billing. So that way we don't have to do some, back billing and do that whole mess. And so that streamlines it really easy. And one thing that we do, and it's also in that video request letter, is that if instructors create their own content, that they are then encouraged to caption it themselves. So at UO, we use Canvas as our learning management system, our LMS, and there's an additional plugin called Panopto, Panopto, and that allows instructors to create video presentations with PowerPoints, and it also has a captioning feature, and it can generate auto captions, but then you can also edit those captions, and it creates a transcript. So students can either just watch the captions at the bottom of the screen or have a running transcript on the side while they're watching the video. And so as instructors being the content experts, they are encouraged to edit those captions for accuracy, but sometimes they are unable to for various reasons. And so we also offer AEC staff member to be added to the Canvas course, and then they can edit those captions. So it's kind of there's two different processes for how we do captioning. I think I answered everything.
Absolutely. I do have a follow-up question related to sending out the letter to faculty, letting them know they need to caption all media in their classroom when they show a video to ensure that it's captioned. If one of you can answer this, maybe a student is in a class, like a counseling class, where the students themselves are required to record themselves in a practicum setting, record themselves counseling, and then the students watch it and give each other feedback. I wouldn't say it's a homemade video, but it's a student-made video that is recorded for school purposes and shared in class. We often see those aren't accessible to students. So how would you handle a request such as that? I don't know, Brittany or Andrew, if you've had experience with that.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. This is Britt. That has come up many times in our workflow. And yes, we would require that is captioned for the accessibility of all students. And it really depends on the kind of situation. So if we had a student with an approved accommodation, then we would use our vendors or our internal processes and figure out a timeline so that we could turn around those projects. And we would do that in cooperation with the faculty member. But my other goal would really be to address the course design of that kind of project and ensure that in the way that the faculty member has developed the course, that it allows turnaround time for captioning through our office, or that they actually even provide the tools so that students can caption their content themselves. We're really fortunate that we have an instance of Kaltura Media Space, which, similar to what Andrew was describing with Panopto, has a integrated caption editing and automated caption rendering software. And so really you just need to provide the expectations and the know-how around the tools, and students can do it themselves. But the goal for us is addressing it at that course design level to make sure that whatever is being asked of students is also sustainable from an accessibility perspective.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, do you use something different, or is it similar for you?
It's fairly similar. We haven't really encountered that too often. Thinking back to when it has happened, again, we kind of encourage, have the students, as they're making the content themselves, to caption it, because that instills, thinking about accessibility in the forefront and not as an afterthought, and try to have that universal design built into not only instructors' materials, but also students' materials, and then they can embed that in future work, hopefully. And then students also Well, there's also YouTube has a caption editor and system in it that students can also use if they can't use Panopto and Canvas. But then we would work with that class if for some reason that wouldn't work, and have the video sent to us to be captioned on time to be accessible. So fairly similar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's very helpful. I know that we sometimes get questions related to that quick turnaround process and how to get things captioned quickly. If a video was made yesterday or a couple days ago and we need it within the next few days or even a week, that really ramps up the process. And we get a lot of questions on how campuses navigate those tight timelines. All right, the next question. Cheryl, I'll direct this to you. I'll expand a little bit first. We know that caption media requires multiple people's involvement, whether it's the department, collaborations with others, outsourcing to an external third party, or some campuses have on-campus services. They have their own captioning department. Some schools don't. Sometimes the Disability Services Office takes care of that. It really runs the gamut. So I want you to share what positive experiences you've had with any kinds of collaborations you've had on and off campus in order to get your media captioned. Cheryl?
Sure. Thank you for that question. It is important. And those collaborations and connections you can make are all valuable because someday they're going to be needed. We have a very unique relationship with Georgia Tech because of our organization being housed there. CIDI, Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, was actually established by our university system of Georgia as a centralized service. And the ability for Georgia Tech in particular to be able to have access and collaborate with us and our services has been incredible. Of course, we also serve our other USG schools as well. So those USG schools, University System of Georgia schools, are able to have that same collaboration, just maybe not on campus together, but they are still able to use our services as much as they need. And that does include caption media. Another thing that I think those collaborations are important with is in training and sharing information. So we're available to our schools to be able to, help them train their Disability Services Office, possibly their faculty, so that the collaboration is essential. It's always good to have that connection, to have someone you can call, have somebody available that can, help you figure out and navigate this, this path. And the question before kind of touched on this, but what to do in the timeline, right? So people are putting out videos so much now. I think the pandemic definitely motivated more video content to be produced and to be shared in more online ways, such as Zoom and other things. Having a new perspective of what live means, I think, is important because everyone knows that it's, a miracle if a video could get turned around in 24 hours, but that's not the reality. So having a expectation of the word live to apply to the first time it's going to be aired with accessibility built in, rather than it being filmed at the moment, I think is what we should be working on, is changing that concept that it's not live until it's accessible, right? Let's don't take it there. Having those collaborations, having the people available that you can turn to make those turnarounds happen are also a great valuable resource. We promote what we call Born Accessible. So that gets to the aspect that anything that is used in a classroom, whether it be text, video, what have you, those should be accessible at adoption. When they're decided to be used, they should be accessible, and students no longer would be waiting a month or two to get those accessible materials. So collaborations, I think, also can help. And if one group cannot get the media ready in time, then you can have collaborators that you can turn to for using it for other videos, so that those can get done simultaneously, so that everything gets ready pretty much at the start of the semester. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. I want to ask one more follow-up question to what you said, Cheryl. The Born Accessible project, was that a reaction, a response that administrators gave you, that how they wanted to respond to needs on campus, or how did that come about?
That's our internal saying that we have at CIDI. It's our dream, really. And we promote every chance we get. We talk about being born accessible, so that, it's a kind of a change in concept. It's a thought process that we don't have to remediate just because a student is in a class, but that the access is provided to all materials when the course is developed, before the first student even goes on that Zoom room or opens that door to the on-campus classroom. The Born Accessible concept is really at a basic faculty level or course development level, so that gets done before a student is even necessarily registered for the class. And it goes with the concept of build it, they will come, right? And it's going to make it so much easier for faculty and disability services offices if they're not trying to retrofit something to make it accessible. If it was created from the beginning as accessible media or accessible material.
Wow, thank you for sharing that that policy. That sounds like a really good way to draw in the entire campus to be accessible from the start. So I agree with you. That is a dream, that the day you start with anything, there should be no question. We should just go along and have everything be accessible. And hopefully that's how it will be. Brittany, do you have experience on your campus with collaborations or partnerships that you have found beneficial when it comes to caption media?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would say that cross-functional efforts have really been the core of our success of our caption media program. In particular, having a close relationship with our Center for Teaching and Learning, which is a faculty-led organization, along with connections with information technology and our campus academic technology team, and then primarily academic deans and our President's Council. The reason why it's important to have that close contact with faculty is it helps us stay on the cutting edge of what technologies are being used, what kinds of materials are presenting problems, and how can we have those solutions in place for media as faculty are encountering them, because we can't be supporting a caption media program that doesn't support the types of media people are using. And of course, COVID-19 had a big effect in that arena. It's crucial to partner with IT for the same reason. What's being supported, what platforms are available. We don't want to support, we're not a Google campus, so we shouldn't be supporting Google products, and we have to really align with what IT is doing, along with partnering closely with our learning platform specialist, so that we know how videos integrate within the learning platforms themselves for our asynchronous classes. Also, having connections with our IT help desk and our instructional designers help route people to me. And that's been probably one of our biggest challenges with our program, is just making sure that people know that I'm here and that I'm here to help in what I do, and that I'm not siloed. And so that's why cross-functional efforts are just critical. And then, of course, you need to have connections at that dean and president's council level in order to have sustainable funding, buy-in, and ways to contact lots of people all at once and really all get on the same page. And those partnerships in particular have led to the development of our campus-wide accessibility policy and major improvements to our faculty handbook outlining expectations for course development and materials procurement.
Great. Yeah, and I agree that getting buy-in from administrators in different areas on campus is a big part and a big question that we get at our help desk. We recognize, you know, that we need to caption media, but then we may have an archive that is limitless and endless. And so a lot of our admins worry about how are we going to pay to get all of this captioned all at once? So developing a plan for campus is fantastic. And so if you don't have a caption policy on campus and you're wondering where to start, administrative buy-in is a good place to start. All right, let's move to the next question here. Andrew, could you share with us if your campus has any policies or practices for procurement, purchase of any instructional materials? Is there a process involved to ensure those new materials are accessible before they are purchased? Because I know faculty will change out textbooks. They include video or media portions. Is there a process to ensure that they are stopped before they purchase something that's inaccessible? Do you partner with purchasing office? Is that any part of your practices or requirements? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. So our office isn't directly involved with that type of work, but we do have like a digital accessibility manager. I'm not sure of their position, and they really oversee kind of those like bigger purchases for the university and making sure that the content is accessible. And if especially for instructors that want to reuse stuff, I know there's a big push through our TEP, teaching engagement program, which is a program here that assists faculty with their materials, and they work with faculty to also use OCR, open resource software. Is that the acronym ORC? Open resource, so materials that students don't have to buy, that is free to use by students and everyone, and making sure that those materials are accessible from the get-go. That's basically the extent that I kind of can speak to that policy here at the university.
Okay. Again, it's a good example of collaborating with other departments across campus to help improve those processes. Cheryl, anything you want to share about your experiences with purchase of new media? Who, if anyone, oversees that and ensures that new purchase materials are accessible?
Well, I don't know if this is like a going trend, but Georgia Tech as a campus has outsourced its bookstore, and it's now Barnes and Noble. So, you know, it's a corporation bookstore. It's no longer a small on-campus bookstore. So we've lost a lot of power there when it comes to that type of student materials. But where we do have some control over is what teachers choose to show, to use in their classroom. And although there's not a set policy per se, there's certainly an established practice that is being followed, we hope, so that it's at least intentional in that when software, media, what have you are selected, that those are people are at least checking VPATs. They're finding out if the material is accessible and to what extent. But then there's also we've already used the term homemade videos here, but let's just call it in-house made videos. CIDI produces quite a bit of videos. We find that telling the story about people with disabilities through video is a great medium. Instead of trying to share with faculty the law and what's required, we find that showing videos and helping them learn from a student's perspective, from a disabled person's perspective, and what kind of like you showed the video here at the beginning, a great technique to use to help others understand, to, not maybe in person, but meet another individual that is dealing with a struggle to access material. And it tends to really sink in, and it does create a sense of responsibility that people need to make sure that for that student that we have accessible materials. We have an example. I talked with our disability service provider this week, and she shared a great situation where we have a fully online course that's offered as a master's program. And the office that puts that course out is fully online, and they were using the AI software for captions. So they were meeting the requirement, but it was with artificial intelligence and not with maybe fully accurate, maybe human captioning. They did end up making sure that for a student that came on board to take that class that needed actual accurate captioning, they did make that happen. And now that they've got that going, it should, persist for that class, which was great. But this kind of a communication network or established practice that's been set up has been working more recently. And like we've mentioned already, the plethora of video material that's coming out now, mostly probably because of the pandemic, but it has put a strain on a lot of different schools, and also on the ability to turn something around very quickly. But I think we have it managed. I think it's happening well, and having a strong policy, though, would definitely help that not be such an afterthought, but more something that's planned earlier in the process.
Right. And prioritization as well, prioritizing requests. I'm sure that's something else to consider, is thinking of, prioritizing if you have a backlog, prioritizing what students are needing now sooner than later. And that becomes another issue. I have one more question. I know several people have asked us questions related to whether your system is centralized or decentralized on campus. That question comes up often. I'm wondering if you could share what system your campus operates under currently, and what are the challenges or benefits with whether you use centralized services or decentralized services. Who wants to take the first stab? Cheryl, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I'll keep my mic open and go here. Georgia Tech as a whole is not a centralized campus. Each school, each unit has their own budget, has their own policy they follow in a sense. However, the Georgia University System of Georgia years ago, 2005, did have the foresight to decide, this is coming, we need to make a plan to have some type of centralized service. And that is what started Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, to serve those Georgia schools. So yes, it's decentralized, but it's also centralized at the same time, in that there's access to a centralized service. And what that has done, at least for these University System of Georgia schools, has created a way for a disability office to remain rather small within their school. They don't each one have to ramp up to be able to provide e-text, braille, caption media, real-time captioning, interpreting, what have you, right? So the centralized process that we offer for our Georgia schools has been really a great thing, that our agency, our organization, CIDI, can bring on these experts, these professionals, and the individual schools around the state can focus on the students and focus on what needs to happen at each of their area. And then they can turn to us kind of to support their needs as a disability service office. Rather than to supporting the student, we support the disability office. So I think, yes, decentralized is what each school's kind of follow as a budget, but centralized as far as accommodation services have been a really great thing for us in Georgia.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. I know, Brittany and Andrew, you may have a different experience. Would either of you like to share? Brittany?
Yeah, hi, this is Britt. I can speak to that. We almost have the reverse of what Cheryl just described, but I would also describe ours as centralized. So Minneapolis Community and Technical College is one of 33 colleges and universities under a blanket system called Minnesota State, or MnState. And so we have many different campuses that are all kind of doing our own thing and have our own policies, but we're all tied together as a system. So within Minneapolis College, I maintain a centralized captioning workflow. And within our college, our budgeting system is also centralized for captioning. So our budget is through the General College Fund, and then specifically through our accommodations and ADA compliance budget, but doesn't have anything to do with that system level. However, the great thing about being part of that system is it's the reason why we have this captioning system that we do, because several years ago, they offered a grant program to all colleges. If they undertook this captioning workflow sustainability project, they were eligible for grant funding. And the whole goal of that was for all 33 of these colleges to develop a sustainable captioning system. And that included things like ensuring year-over-year consistent, sustainable budget. So our system for captioning is centralized and our budget is centralized, but it is discrete and distinct from our system level budget. So it's really kind of the opposite of Cheryl in its own way. So that was really interesting to hear that vice versa. And honestly, I can kind of see the benefits to both. Like, it's very intimate in my college. I know the faculty, I know the students, and a lot of it is tied to accommodation. But I had already addressed that issue of siloing, which can be a challenge as well. And Cheryl was experiencing a very opposite thing. So there are lots of different ways to go about this.
Thank you for sharing that. Two different models that can really help us think through, if we're having a problem on our campus, where we might make some adjustments to our approach. So thank you both for sharing. Well, we're about out of time for the questions for our panelists. I know you still have more questions. I'm seeing these questions here. I know some of you may be, wondering about classroom and academic needs and campus-wide needs. You may be thinking about any kind of public-facing media. For example, when you think about social media posts or anything that's on your web, On-campus videos that are hosted and shared in public spaces, should those be captioned? Yes, of course, we know they should be, but what's the process for that? Is it different than faculty who is captioning media for their classroom? So we do have coming up a working group for up to 10 disability services professionals to join. We'll get into this topic more in depth as a small working group. We'll talk about policies, procedures. We can help walk you through developing those. That working group will meet just once a month from about March through the next 3 or 4 months. We'll decide exactly which day that meeting will be, but it will be from 1 to 2 o'clock Central Time, and it will be a time to discuss in a small group setting about policies, procedures, where we've been stuck, where we can rely on each other to offer options and get more in depth related to your campus captioning policies. If that isn't something that you can do, you can email our help desk at any time, or you can also email one of our panelists specifically. Maybe they answered a question today and you have follow-up questions, or you want to know more about what they shared. We will be sharing, with their permission, their contact information in the chat box, so you can ask questions directly to them after this webinar today. With that, I want to thank the panelists for being here. Again, like I said, I know this is such a busy time of year at the beginning of the school year, so I appreciate your time sharing your models and best practices with our audience today. Thank you so much.